Okay, welcome back. We are going to start with our 6.9 item, 1:30 p.m. public hearing continued from, wait, is that the right one? Yes, okay. Continued from September 12th, 2023, consideration of the final recommended budget for fiscal year 2023-2024 for the County of Lake and special districts governed by the Board of Supervisors. And I will pass this off to our admin and Assistant CAO, Stephen Carter.
Thank you, Board. And actually, I'm not going to say much before I pass it along and introduce you to Casey Moreno, who is our new Deputy County Administrative Officer over Finance and Budget. And I'll turn it over to her.
It's just on.
Sorry. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so we are pleased to present for your board's consideration the fiscal year 2023-24 final recommended budget. This memorandum is intended to serve as an update to our July 9, 2023 memorandum introducing the fiscal year 2023-24 recommended budget. For your reference, the memorandum is also attached to your agenda packet as much of it is still applicable. So now I will start with a summary of the revenues, starting with the interest. So on August 15th, your board requested a review of the interest revenues. As you can see, the 2022-23 overall interest was just over $5.9 million. The county interest was almost $4 million, $3.886. The non-county interest was just over $2 million. That is a significant jump from 2021-22, which was the overall interest was just under $1 million. For reference, we went back 11 years to see what the interest has been. And as you can see, in 2019, there was a significant jump, and that was due to the investments that came due and were not reinvested, which is why you see that huge spike there. Then it drops down due to those investments not being reinvested. And then currently, the last fiscal year at 22-23, it was significantly higher. We do anticipate that the revenues will even out and become more consistent in the future. Next, we'll go into the fund balance available or carryover. So the estimated FBA decreased by just over $11 million from the prior year. 22-23, which still leaves $31 million in FBA. Just over $17 million of that was already approved allocations at recommended budget. Then we have a few reserves that we are requesting funds be added to, which I will go into further detail on another slide. And then with the final recommended budget, we have $1.4 million new allocations that are being requested.
Do you mind if I ask a question? Yeah. General fund only is the fund carry balance that you're giving us?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And the new allocations are mostly capital assets and a few ARPA. So going into ARPA, so the committee met on August 16th and would like to make the following changes. So from the standard allowance, the mobile library vehicle, we are requesting it be decreased from $200,000 to $150,000. The countywide credit card acceptance decreased altogether, so taking out the $50,000. The Granicus clerk docs was originally budgeted at $64,500. That has been completed, so we are reducing that to $54,100. The content management system decreased from $150,000 to $75,000, and the CDD general plan update, increasing that from $1 million to $1.6 million. Of the non-standard allowance, we are requesting that a new allocation is added for a medical director for fire departments, which will be paid through public health of $6,800. That's a 3-year contract. The testing and vaccination sites, we are requesting that be zeroed out altogether. EMS contract decreasing from $200,000 to $150,000, and the Kelseyville Senior Center increasing by $100,000.
And I did want to clarify one thing. The difference between standard allowance and the non-standard allowance, for those who don't know, the standard allowance is the $10 million that each county is allowed to utilize for governmental services for basically revenue loss. The non-standard allowance is the amount that has to be utilized under the actual claiming and rules specific to the ARPA funds, which totals just over $2.5 million.
Moving into the sales tax, so the Bradley Burns sales tax increased by $129,784, or 3%. Prop 172 sales tax decreased by $296,007, or 6%. Again, we went back 11 years, and this graph does include the current year, what we are estimating. We are expecting the tax revenue will decrease, so more than likely at mid-year, we will come back to ask for the allocation to be decreased.
Yeah, I'm going to expand a little on that one.
Okay.
So we have noticed, and per the projections, that sales tax is projected to decrease this year. We did budget for it to decrease by a few $100,000, but depending on what actually comes in before mid-year, we'll adjust accordingly, which may or may not be more than we originally budgeted for.
Moving into taxes. So current secured property tax was an increase of $1.1 million, or 7% increase. Transient occupancy tax decreased by $57,000, or 5%. Cannabis tax decreased by $4.5 million, or 71% decrease. We are anticipating current secured property tax to go up this year again. Transient occupancy tax, we are expecting to come back up to closer to $1 million. And cannabis, we are anticipating to continue to decline, just not as significant as it was the past year. So with cannabis, the balance after the allocations that are currently in the recommended budget is 30% for planning, code enforcement, water resources, environmental health is $467,994. The 30% for law enforcement leaves a balance of $395,970. The 30% for economic development, housing, risk reduction is $1,208,891. And the 10% for youth programs is $294,383. Also available is the workforce retention and development of $164, and the Board of Supervisors discretionary fund of $146,528.
And the part in there that is not stated because it's not part of the 30-30-10, 30-30-30-10 split is the stabilization fund, which remains at just over $6.9 million, which is for payroll if, under the new MOUs, that we were not able to have the general fund or support for non-general fund departments. We currently do support child support and CDD through this funding. And this also is for ongoing expenses within the allocations, like the libraries, where during the initial CAN grant, the board approved positions. They are still funded out of their allocation here, and if revenues went to zero, that's what would pick up the slack and pay for those positions, as well as 2 sheriff deputies, the last 2, that was the agreement, $200,000 for the last 2. If they hire the last 2, it would come out of the law enforcement first, and if there's nothing there, it would then come out of the stabilization.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know at
excuse me. At first glance, it appears to be growing, but you're saying it's kind of a combination of things that have been brought together. I guess first thoughts are that our CAN grants are from 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Just kind of curious what was approved and what's not moving. Is it not moving in the sense that that money should be reallocated to be available, or is it still moving where the allocation is still has a purpose? I would love to discuss the continued need of $6.5 million or whatever that approximate amount is in that specific budget item, as the way that our budget is done on a department-by-department basis, we're not utilizing those funds other than what you just stated for CDD and child welfare. And so I just like to get a better grasp on what that amount is. We put it there for a specific reason. It hasn't been necessarily utilized in the way that we had anticipated it might be needed. And I just see it as another kind of niche reserve on top of reserves of things that could be utilized for something else. I won't go into details now, but I'd love to go into further discussion at one point or another. And today's, I don't know if that's the day. I don't feel it's the day, but I'd love to bring it back, if there's consensus to do so. That's a large amount of money.
We can bring that back if it is the board's wish. The stabilization funding is to cover basically any ongoing expenses that are already built into the other cannabis funding. And when your board approved the pay increases, the MOUs, it was meant to be a one-year backstop for if the general fund and other departments didn't have the funding. That can definitely be looked at and possibly adjust the number down or up depending on how the board looks at it.
And some of the funding for risk reduction will likely be used for tree removal too.
That would likely come out of the 6.9, yes. Out of the stabilization, that's how that would be funded if that comes a day.
When that comes,
Yeah, when.
when that comes.
And I will say that, you know, when Casey was bringing up that there's $467,000 left of the planning, code enforcement, water resources, that's with just over $1 million in allocations for fiscal year 23-24, I was going to say 13-14. So there are quite a bit of allocations, and that also fluctuates quite a bit depending on what departments get done that year and then what they're requesting out of that pot the next year. I know you know that, but.
So to his point, is now the appropriate time to do that, or do we bring it back? Because I have cannabis tax allocations that kind of got placed under the former supervisor. Then we came up with the direction for a work program. Now it looks like they got funding from another source. So I'm definitely confused about the available discretionary funds on top of whatever concerns are raised about reserves. So maybe today is not the day to get that exact roadmap, but if we're actually locking in that shift from the previous allocation to some other allocation, waiting on a work program I'm not going to get, I just want to know when we're going to look at that.
The discretionary is not locked in at this point, other than the overall amount. I think we should talk more offline about that $165,000 on that specific discretionary and the other funding sources. I do think if we want to dig deep into the stabilization and everything else that goes into the allocations, we probably should have an item of its own, because we would prepare very differently for it and have far more details for you.
And that would be my request, is give us more details. My idea is not to say let's cancel it, but let's take a look at it. It's a large sum of money. Can it be better utilized, whether it's for what Chair Pyska was requesting that we look at, or other things. But right now it was meant for a one-year backstop. We've passed that year, and I think we need to make sure that we can continue moving forward within our means, because this is one-time money, not continuous money. And if we can figure out how to work within our means, then that money is sitting there that could be utilized to serve our public in better ways.
At a later date, correct?
Yes.
We could, it's a little far off, but we do have a lot of really full agendas, so we could have that deeper dive discussion at mid-year budget.
If earlier, great.
But, yeah, but I'm good with mid-year too, if that's when it happens.
We will be ready when you need us to be.
Okay.
And if I may add, for the discretionary funds, I would definitely suggest working with staff, because I don't want to make decisions on your discretionary funds, just like I don't want you to make decisions on my discretionary funds. So I would say work with them and figure out where you stand and what you can still do with it.
Okay.
So there's a few changes since admin finalized the budget, and so we would like to request that those are added to the approval today. To Budget Unit 8799, Air Quality, I'd like to increase 1513 by $410, decrease 25 by $410, decrease 38 by $2,364. The reason that there's more decreases than increases is they didn't want to use FBA for their increases in insurance. We also wanted to highlight Budget 1011, which is the Board of Supervisors. So we budgeted for a PR firm for the BOS at $50,000, and we are issuing an RFP for a lobbyist. We'll try to bring the board's chambers remodel forward at mid-year. And then Maria would like to come up and...
Thank you. Mireya Turner, Community Development Director. I have a request that was inadvertently omitted from the final budget, so I'm very thankful for this opportunity to bring it to you directly. I would like to request the funding of the principal planner position. In the year, just over a year that I have been acting as director, about 80% of my time is still used directly overseeing the planning division. This can be anything from handling more complex counter questions, answering a number of questions and giving direction to staff, to planning staff, as well as maintaining. I am the final editor of the staff reports for the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. We have done a number of internal improvements that have really benefited and helped our relationship and our credibility, but it still takes a lot of my time. So, we did adjust our revenues to reflect increased revenues that would help to support this position. We have a number of large projects coming. The general plan and local area plan updates, Maha-Gwinnett Valley is returning. We have a modification to an existing geothermal permit, and we don't anticipate that being the last. So we have plenty to keep a new person here funded and very busy. So I would just request funding for a principal planner position in this budget year. Thank you.
So how long do you anticipate the position needing to rely on general funds before it's self-sustaining?
A number of our upper level management positions depend on different budgets. And as you know, planning typically is very reliant on the general fund. We requested a removal of the grant writer position that I had formerly thought was great, but since our deputy administrator has been present, her experience and understanding of grant writing and grant management has led us to believe that a staff services analyst would be more appropriate for that. But we do anticipate a 2 to 3 year growth in our grants management program, or our grants program, with the overall goal to achieve sustainability in the planning division. So maybe that long?
Okay.
But one other thing I wanted to point out is, with this additional staff capacity, especially in experience level, it will enable us to also do more monitoring of our existing permits and ensure compliance, and probably collect some citations and fines where that is not, where we aren't having the easiest time with that.
Supervisor Sabatier?
I was going to bring that up. It was alluded to earlier today in the previous agenda item, but I think that the idea that the contract is being negotiated, I'm thinking it's going to come back to the Board of Supervisors before anything gets approved, but I would say that that's part of the solution because right now we're just doing the work of people who are not choosing to comply with our code. That's going to add a whole lot of revenues. I've seen it in other jurisdictions, and the number is actually a lot larger than we might even believe it could be. So I think that will help out, and that will be part of the solution as well. But providing you with the tools, especially with the following agenda items that are coming up that relate to your department, that's a heavy lift, and we want to make sure that everything else that your department's dealing with is going to be smooth and efficient for everyone else that's trying to get permits, start new businesses, development, whatever it is. So I'm in support, but I think we need to keep an eye on it just to make sure that we're not digging too deep into the general fund.
Thank you.
I can't let you go yet.
I'm not going anywhere.
I need actual numbers and accounts to actually change it at final budget.
No problem. Like right this moment, I will get that for you momentarily.
You print what you had, and then I'll state it.
Yes.
First of all, was that approved?
Yes.
Yep,
Okay, and I'll state that later.
okay.
Next, we'll go into the reserve funds. So the general reserves, we are asking for another 500,000 be added, so that will leave the balance at 16 million. The Parks Reserve is a brand-new reserve, and we are asking that 3 million be added to it. That will be for the JPA and or could be used for county parks. Next is the Technology Reserve. So currently there is 2 million, a little over 2 million in there, so we're asking that another 4 million be added there. The General Designated Reserve is a new reserve which we are planning on housing the LATCF funds in their entirety, as none has been spent yet. And that reserve account is planned, we are planning on using that for other funding sources in the future that are
But we did commit 1% of that.
we did, yeah.
We haven't spent
It just hasn't been spent yet, yeah.
The other types of funding that would go in there would be if we ever have ARPA or LATCF, basically funding sources that have restrictive reporting requirements that shouldn't be just lumped into the massive general fund FBA or,
Okay, that's our strings attached.
basically, yes.
And the last is a new fund that is a trust fund for housing. So we are requesting 1 million of ARPA be put in there, and then we're matching it with 1 million of general fund.
Supervisor Sabatier.
Just real quick, is this the last of the conversation regarding reserves at this moment in time?
So next up, I would like to bring Elise Jones from Behavioral Health, but if you have questions not behavioral health related?
Okay, so I do have some questions about some of the specifics that are up there. Parks Reserve, we've been talking a lot about the JPA and the potential for a county-wide effort for Parks and Rec. Are the 3 millions committed to that specifically, or just kind of a nebulous parks?
Well, see, that's what she was saying, where it can be used for JPA or LARS and parks. That's for your board to decide when and how it is used when it comes out. Our intention with the 3 million was for the JPA. This Fund 152 would have to come through the administration office before coming to your board. So I'm hopeful that the board would know what their intent of this fund would be.
I'll just voice my opinion. I think the intent should be for the JPA so that we show commitment to the county-wide effort.
I think I agree with the intent that it's with the JPA. I don't think we have any plans to spend it for any other way. I think this year, we should be working with all the parties of the JPA to commit funding and have their set-asides made. So this is a good faith effort for us to start that, and we can look to the other partners to see how they follow suit. Supervisor Green?
I'm open to the discussion. However, I think we are going to have some public input on this particular reserve and maybe some other reserves along the way. I I hear some people wanting to lock it in for JPA. I think the county has substantial needs as well, so I kind of like the nebulous nature of it right now, because we are going to have to bounce some numbers around in the future and decide what an appropriate use is. So I kind of like the idea of an open-ended reserve, especially if there's going to be other requests to bump up the JPA funding. Maybe it doesn't have to be with the reserve route. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't want to lock this reserve in.
Yeah, I like the definition that it would be both combined with JPA and parks, not being specific on one. Obviously, I know I'm part of a JPA. I would love to have a $3 million infusion of funds from the board for another JPA. But I think it's very important on the project we're talking about with the countywide JPA, so some type of commitment needs to be there. So I'm in agreement with that, just not specific to it.
Right. Yep.
I would rather it be specific to parks. I'm not in favor of the EPA having anything, so, in my opinion.
And that's why it is called just the Parks Reserve,
There you
because
go.
it can be however the board decides to release the funds from the reserve. So it would be an item at that time requesting specific usage. But that's why it's purposely not specific to either way, but it could theoretically be either, depending on your board's opinion at the time.
And I understand we need to contribute. It's just, I feel it can be spent other ways, but we're going to move in that direction.
Go ahead.
So just to finish off, until we get a specific ask from the JPA, it's hard to know exactly what the intent should be, but I just think even if it's kind of nebulous, we've obviously voiced some opinions of, yes, we'd like to commit something, and maybe it's not the 3 million, but at least it allows us to approach the table with a good faith effort that we are wanting to contribute rather than just be at the table. So I think it puts us in a better position, at least moving forward, compared to where we were before, since that reserve did not exist. The general designated reserve, just a real quick question, capital asset-wise, anytime during the year to look at capital asset changes, and I don't even know if it fits within capital assets. I'm trying to figure out for the potential LG Sonic, do we need to look at adding a capital asset at mid-year or now, or is it any time during the year that that's capable to do so?
With a 4/5 vote, because it would be in reserve at this time, it would be a resolution brought forward to cancel those reserves and add an appropriation of this capital asset or in this account. So it is not horribly difficult, it's just much easier at one of the 3 budget times.
Okay.
Are you asking for that funding for that project now?
That was originally on the request, was to look at either ARPA or LATCF or other things. And so since that's LATCF funds, it's still a possibility. Again, it's not set in stone, just a conversation to make sure that it's available if it comes up and is brought to the board.
Are you looking at other funding opportunities or grants? Because I think we could use this to offset with some matching funds. That's a big ask.
I know we've looked at grants, especially in helping our water districts in the sense of drought resiliency, and that was denied. So, of course, we'll still be looking for free money.
Okay.
Free money is always a great thing. But just the fact that we have it and it's needed, at least it's a potential conversation.
Okay. Yeah, keep looking too. Okay.
All right, so I would like to bring up Elise Jones. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I did want to bring up one more thing, which if the public remembered from recommended budget, we did put the first tranche or the first half of LATCF into reserve. It was put into the technology reserve. So with this, instead of doing the mechanics of pulling it out of technology and then putting it into the general designated reserve, I can speak. I just wanted to be very clear that the 1.5 million that was in the technology reserve from LATCF is now moved to the general designated reserve, just to be ultra clear.
Okay, thank you.
Elise?
Come on up.
Oh, you can have my side.
Thank you.
Casey. Hello. Oh, it is really loud and live. That's good. Elise Jones, Director of Behavioral Health. Thank you so much, Casey, for that introduction. And I'd like to make another introduction to Christine Andrist, who is our Deputy Director of Administration, newly promoted. She was previously our fiscal manager, so she has become an expert in behavioral health finance. But for this question, Chrissy, about our reserves.
So, as before, we came to you guys and asked for a resolution to open up our reserve account to cover our end-of-the-year fiscal invoices, which we didn't end up needing nearly as much as the funding as we expected. So going back into reserves, we still have about $2.5 million going back into the reserves. There was about 3.5 in there prior. And so we just wanted to, yeah, that's what I have here. So in MHSA funding, we have 1.1 going back in, and we only ended up using a total of, actually, I just had it on here, $951,000 out of that funding to cover the end of the year. So we still have funding in reserves. The only funding we used was our MHSA programs. We used $181,000 out of that, and then our audit settlements is where we used 700. I believe it's like 750 something out of that. 769,000 out of that. Everything else was put back into the same accounts as it was prior. Yeah, we're hoping. So we're hoping to put all that funding back as soon as the state releases it to us back into the reserves.
Go ahead.
Just a real quick question. That means that the payments are smoothing out as far as the new process with the new software that you guys are using, or the new payment method that you're using?
Yes, we are seeing funding coming back in from our new billing
Yes,
system.
and just so you know, it's the director signs all of the billing. I didn't know that. Well, I kind of did. Anyways.
Now you do.
Now I for sure do. But it's nice because I have seen it got a little slim there for a minute as we had, but I've seen it pick back up, so that's been really encouraging.
Good. Quick question about AODS, because I know that's mostly a audit settlement reserve as well. That's what it says.
Yeah, I don't know who
Restricted
named
audit
those reserve
settlement.
accounts.
What was that?
I don't know who named those reserve accounts. I think the one in the 414 budget is actually says housing.
Yeah, there's different ones. There's South
Yeah.
Shore Remodel, there's audit settlement, workforce training, housing, MHSA programs, and things like that.
I don't know what this one is.
That was added this year.
Oh, okay.
So my question, if you don't mind, it appeared when we borrowed money from the reserves that audit settlements was not a state-mandated reserve. It was a local decision to create that reserve. Seeing that there's 1.5 million in AODS, I'd like to understand, if possible, not now, but giving us documentation as to how did we come to 1.4 million being saved in audit settlements. Where did that amount come from specifically? How did we choose that amount? Just because there's such a need for those services, just wondering if there's anything that can be released so that we can provide more services, or if there's a real good reason as to why we fear that an audit settlement might end up costing us to 1.4.
So I want to first provide a little bit of, and I don't want to take the whole, because we could take a long time talking about behavioral health finance. It's pretty complex. But I think just really simply, those services that we're talking about are Medi-Cal reimbursable. Of course, what becomes Medi-Cal reimbursable will expand under ODS, and we're looking forward to that. But right now, the contract, as we talked about before with the state that allows us to pay for those, it's really a placeholder. So there isn't a limit necessarily on how much services you can provide as long as those services are justifiable and they're not fraudulent, right? So that's just there's no cap on services whatsoever. Some of the services that are not DMC reimbursable, we do use like our substance abuse block grant funds and other things, but Chrissy may want to follow up on the specifics of your question. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
So the audit settlement accounts are after cost reports are settled with the state. They give us back funding. So for instance, we'll pay out stuff that we don't get reimbursed from by the state, and the state's catching up. So these are audit settlements of funding that comes back to us after we've closed out the fiscal year. So I know we saw a huge increase from 2016-17 on a cost report settlement from those years on, I want to say they were perinatal funding that, and services that we had billed up to the state, but they never had paid us back. And they finally, once they did their cost report settlement, they paid us those services back.
In case that settlement happens and it's not in our favor, this is what pays for it.
Yeah, so like Stephen was saying, if we had a cost report settlement
Can you
that we
say-
had to
'cause it-
pay, so he's talking about cost report settlements. So these are funding, this is a bucket of money that we sit on, is if we have a cost report settlement that we have to pay on services, then this is the bucket of money we'll take it out of as well.
And so that would come from like an audit where the Department of Healthcare Services comes in and they audit our, everything just like we do to our subcontractors. And, you know, time to time, you don't check all the, dot the Ts and cross the whatever, you know. So we do have to pay up sometimes, although it's
Yeah.
pretty minimal.
And our contractors have to do the same thing. If the state comes out and audits them and they find a service that should not have been paid for, our contractors will pay us back for that service as well.
Okay.
Are you still wanting him to come back with an explanation of what makes up the 1.4, or was that sufficient?
I'm still looking for that documentation, just because I don't know where that number comes from. Was there a mathematical formula? Like, what was the initial process to create that, and is it needed to be updated, changed, or?
Well, I think it's just a carryover of every year of all the cost report settlements or the settlements that come in throughout the year. We carry it over into that reserve at the end of the year when we have a fund balance carryover. When there's funding left over from it, we put it into that slot of funding.
With that in mind, they're actually increasing it by $519,000 this year. So under what has happened, it was actually a good audit year for us, if per se.
Okay.
So it is variable.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Is that it?
So next, we'll go into capital assets. There's a few additions to the final recommended budget, which are on the screen there. All I included was the brand-new additions. There was also some capital assets that either increased or decreased, which are in final recommended budget.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Just a quick question to finish up with the reserves. I did have one final question, and that is that we have 5 pages, it would appear, of reserves, or close to, of reserves, and some of those are quite large, some of those are very small and specific, some are restricted, some are general. I just don't, there's no possible way for me within the 5 days in preparing and even the changes that are occurring for me to know exactly what those reserves, what the specific purpose is, and from a specific public perspective, what I see is $132, almost $133 million in reserves, which is a large amount. Some of it is absolutely necessary, some of it is enterprise restricted, some of it is very specifically restricted by the state. I would love to get a report to allow us to know what are the reasons for the reserves in a future report, whether that be mid-year or sometime between now and mid-year, but that is a large number that is not easily explainable to the public. And even some of these numbers, I'm making a lot of assumptions as to what I'm seeing and what I'm looking at. And so I just think with that large of a number, it would be nice to get a little bit of a breakdown to understand, do we still need some of these reserves? What is the purpose of those reserves? And what is the anticipated use of those reserves?
That would be very difficult to come up with, because this is going to be 80% of these are department specific. So I would want the department to talk about their reserves. As admin goes, we would only be about 5 or 6 of these. So we can come up with some kind of report. It would take time to talk to each and every department who has a reserve and get their description of what those are. And if we presented, I don't like pushing things off, but the easiest time to do that would be either at like the workshop or during June when every single department head is explaining their budget. Absolutely explain what these reserves are and why. We can try to come up with some kind of report. I have no idea what it would look like until I talk to the departments.
But in the department memos, it talks about their reserves typically. Do you want like a separate box in the memo directly for reserves?
I just think, again, from a public perspective, $132 million is a large amount of money. From my perspective, that's a large amount of money. Not saying there's no purpose in having it, but I can think of approximately $40 million of somewhat discretionary, but yet useful to have in reserves. Again, having a conversation about what our expectation and anticipation of the use of those reserves are is a healthy conversation to have. And I'll just leave it at that. I just think that we don't give the public the information as far as in our conversations. Reading through this 600-page budget is not what I should be asking the public to go through to figure out what's going on with $132 million worth of reserves. And so if it's possible, at one point, not giving you a specific date, but again, looking at the board for approval of this, to help provide a little bit more understanding of what this is. Taxpayers are providing this, and I don't know that anybody would be able to answer these questions if I started asking the public what's going on with these funds. And I can't specifically explain every single one of them myself, which is not good on my end.
Neither can I, to be honest with you.
And see that right there?
Yeah.
That comment, I think, is a reason for us to review, not to say anything bad is happening, but to better understand why it is that we have it there so we can explain it to ourselves and explain it to our constituents.
Well, I think adding it to the narrative, we've got all of these boxes that outline the priorities and the goals, and if there are reserves accounts attached to the budget unit for the department, then an explanation on the reserves within the narrative for us.
And that would be a step forward.
And if you
And I
look
would
at the
agree
fund
with that.
summary, it does
Absolutely,
actually
adding a
have
box on the
descriptions.
reserves.
Yeah, let's add a box, different color.
Well, if you look at the fund summary that's provided, it gives you the breakdown of what the descriptions of they are. But I also understand when certain ones say just restricted, like under road restricted, sorry roads, that's just random where I'm at, restricted 7.2 million, restricted isn't a known quantity. I'm all for having that knowledge brought out for the public. I just think it needs to be from the department themselves. And the time that we already have to do that is generally our 2 days in June. If the board does want basically every department head who has a reserve to present at mid-year, we can do that because that's what it would take to explain these. Because I don't know that I would feel comfortable just giving you the paragraph of what a department said their reserve is and then be able to answer any questions related to it.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that
Adding it,
forward step. At least it's a step towards what I think is a better transparency.
When we explain to department heads for the June presentation, make it very clear to
include that information.
include.
Include it in the memo, include it in the presentation
In June.
in June. Consensus? Yes? Okay.
I don't know that would be included in the memo because that's already like 8 pages.
Within the summary, I think is.
The
what you
summary,
said.
yeah,
The fund summary.
the fund summary.
Yes.
The memo in this
That's what you're.
budget
calling the
unit.
memo.
Yes.
Department overview? Do you mean like the Form 1?
Department overview.
The first page of every
Yes.
department and fund.
Fund-
It says department overview, accomplishments,
Hey,
goals, and then we talk about reserves.
sounds good.
Okay.
Casey? Need you?
Okay. So now we'll bring up Lars Ewing, Director of Public Services for the Facilities Capital Improvement Plan. Oh, wait. I need help.
Don't need help.
All right, good afternoon. Lars Ewing, Public Services Director. As this is getting dialed up, I'll just give a brief intro. Also the last fiscal year, now I can say that, your board directed Public Services to come up with a facilities capital improvement plan. County has never had one, and so we have prepared that. We have a capital improvement plan policy that guides that. It does direct that during final budget presentations, that the Public Services Director would present that. So the next, here we go, next slide, it's me. All right, so we just went through capital assets. These is just a picture of the various capital assets that you've looked at. What I'm going to be presenting here is not everything on here, far from it. There's a lot on here that I have no involvement with, thankfully. And so what I am going to be presenting focuses on facilities. And what's up on the screen right now is a draft capital improvement plan that will come to the board. And I'll say I elected to wait until after final budget because there's so many decisions made at this point, reserves, fund balance carryover, that really plays into a 5-year plan. What's tied in today is the annual budget, but the 5-year plan is not a budget document, it's a planning document. So a lot of the decisions made here affect that. So I am going to give a snapshot of that 5-year plan, but I will be focusing on the facility specific and some of the park specific projects this year. I will try to be brief. As I say that, a lot of words. All right, so what I'm going to present here is broken down not by budget units, which is what we're all familiar with. I'm breaking it down into functional areas. Yeah, you can see there are 6 different functional areas. That way, the board can get an understanding of where your building dollars going to. Are they going to community services type buildings, which are generally used by the public, like libraries, museums, senior centers, community rooms? General government, the building we're in is probably a good example of that. Health and social services, generally anything in behavioral health, child support, environmental health, public health, and social services. Public safety, essentially anything that is sheriff, probation, DA, animal control, and everything from there up are buildings. From parks down are non-buildings, so recreation facilities and public infrastructure is the last item. That's generally public works, special districts, and part of public services as well with the landfill. So the built infrastructure, what is in the current budget across all departments for built infrastructure on capital asset. You can see public infrastructure is the majority, about 74%, and the rest is it's the rest. And so we're going to focus on that item here, and so we'll dial down to that. You can see that of the 10.6 million, the majority, well, not the majority, but 38% is general, 32% is parks, and you dial down from there. So just because we're focusing on a facilities capital improvement plan, I am going to focus on the building portion, but I wanted to pause because the Parks Reserve and the JPA was referenced. The 5-year plan. The 5-year plan includes a lot of parks projects. The needs far exceed any reserve that we have or anything that the JPA may propose. So I greatly appreciate the notion of not just the notion, but the reserve itself, and the fact that our needs exceed what we have really just demonstrates the fact that those reserves are important so long as they're used. So moving on into the focus area of facilities. General government is the bulk, 57%, followed by public safety, and this is this fiscal year. Community services, 13%, and health and social services, 3%. Again, just kind of dialing it down, that we are going to give a sneak peek. I am going to give a sneak peek of the next 5 years, just what is planned. This is a joint effort between the department heads who submit their capital project requests in going through the budget process, working with admin, working with the board to identify what projects we need to plan for. That's really what this is an outlook. So I will be coming to the board to present this plan, but just to give you a sense of what we currently are looking at by functional area, what the plan is. You can see that there's quite a few needs. 11 million this fiscal year. Again, just in facilities and parks. This does not include the public infrastructure. So we're looking like the needs are clearly there. Now I'm going to present it briefly differently here. Instead of by functional area, it's by type of project. Are we renovating or are we rehabbing? Essentially, is a renovation would be something that generally a department would request. Maybe they want to remodel because it's better for their operations, or a new building entirely. That's a renovation project. Rehab is essentially a maintenance project. We're replacing the roof, or replacing the carpet, that sort of project. So it's important to see where are we spending our money, where's the board spending its money on projects. So renovation in gray, that's this year, we're looking quite a bit, and the same throughout. And that really points back to the deferred maintenance plan and the facility condition assessments that we had prepared that you may recall pointed to about an $8 or $9 million need per year. We looked at that in a lot more detail, and that plan at a high level made certain assumptions that no, we may not need to actually replace a door simply because it's exceeded its life. If it's okay, let's move on. So what are the building systems that we truly need to replace? We focused on basically the building exterior, the roof and the exterior of the building. I mean, case in point, we're replacing the roof right now on this building and we're painting it right now. So that sort of work. HVAC projects are critical. Those are continually needing to be updated. The carpet, flooring in buildings, and the building exterior, the parking lots. Those are the focused building systems that we're looking to rehab. And so when we look at that, the rehab portion, on average, about a $3.5 million per year plan to replace that. Now again, the needs far exceed what we have, but as we identify the reserves that might be available and putting our money towards getting our facilities in better working order, that really is the focus. So with that, I just, I'm going to end it. Don't want to belabor the point, but wanted to give you a sense of where the building money is going. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lars. Any questions? Supervisor Green?
You had a spreadsheet a couple slides ago on showing the breakdown. I saw one of the capital assets that the sheriffs had called out was for a video security system, basically. Can we get that slide up again? And I think it was 150 and 50.
That must have been on your slide.
There we go. Yeah, so lines 2 and 3 together, security camera system, and then backup storage. And I just want to highlight that because, number one, it's like it almost passed without comment because, of course, the jail would need to have robust security. But as I've mentioned in other meetings prior, there may be other buildings and other properties in the county that may benefit from some enhancements like that. And I get there would be price concerns from any department head, and also some debate about the efficacy of a security installation in any particular building. But somewhere between the safety committee and the department heads, I just wanted to highlight that as a worst case scenario. That's a very large, complicated facility with multiple cameras. That is the absolute most that a security camera system is going to cost for any one department that has concerns about that. So for lesser buildings, smaller buildings that may similarly have safety concerns, I don't want the sticker shock factor to go untested or unobserved. Not saying we all have to rush out and get cameras, but I still feel like we're stuck in the 20th century when we have 21st century security concerns. So I just wanted to highlight that because I thank the Sheriff's Department very much for being proactive and bringing that forward. And I think other department heads might be taking a look at similar capital asset requests in future budget cycles, perhaps as soon as mid-year, if they find in concert with the safety committee that they want to take a look at bumping up security at certain sites. And I certainly think there are certain sites within the county that could bear that examination. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Lars.
All right, thank you.
Right, so next up is the requested position allocation changes. So there was just a few this time around. So the tax collector would like a accountant 1/2, and they will be removing a accounting technician position at the next vacancy. Buildings and grounds would like a capital project manager and a facility maintenance supervisor. The supervisor it will be paid from the facility maintenance lead worker position will be removed at the next vacancy. Child Support Services is removing an accountant tech senior to create a accounting technician position. Planning is, as Maria mentioned, removing the grant manager and replacing it with a staff service analyst. Animal Control is adding a staff service analyst, and Mental Health is removing a behavioral health program manager to increase their supervisor behavioral health clinician specialist by 2.
And since you just went over that, might as well add in Budget Unit 2702 Planning, we're adding a principal planner.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then the sheriff would like to come up to share his plan for position allocation change. So Rob Howe.
Absolutely.
Look at all this stuff. Good afternoon, Board. I'm Sheriff Rob Howden. I'd like to thank the Board for this time, of course. This is a little bit out of the ordinary, completely new for me. So what I'll be requesting here is a potential change to the Sheriff's Department's position allocation. And since position allocation is part of final budget, I decided to make this request here. The request would be a position allocation change from our proposed budget. We're looking to eliminate 16 total unfilled positions, 19 deputy sheriffs, and 7 deputy sheriff corrections position. We would then be requesting the board's approval to use the savings gained from those positions, excuse me, to move forward with salary increases to 3 job classification series. 3 series that frankly I see as public safety emergencies right now. I have to say it's a really difficult decision to single out positions, even in my own department. There are no positions in my department that aren't vital to public safety. There are no positions that don't need improvement to salary and benefits. But I'll be working more traditionally with class and comp to do that. I can really only consider 3 positions right now, or 3 series of positions, emergencies. And those classifications I'd be looking at would be deputy sheriff corrections, and public safety dispatcher. Human Resources has been good enough to conduct an updated mini salary survey for those positions, including the same comparable counties the counties used previously in their complete salary survey. And the increase I'd be seeking would be to get those 3 series of classifications to the median base salary of that survey. For deputy sheriff, that would be a 12.59% increase. For deputy sheriff corrections, there would be a 5.89%, and for public safety dispatcher, it would be 11.04. Again, those increases would simply get us to the median base salary of the comparable agencies. My first thought was try to get us at least equal to our most immediate neighbors and competitors, being Lakeport PD, CPD, Clear Lake Police Department, and Mendocino County Sheriff's Department. This proposal would get us at least equal with Lakeport PD and Clear Lake Police Department. Mendocino is actually a little higher than the median on all those, and quite frankly, within our own budget, I didn't feel we could afford to make that kind of increase without asking for additional general fund. Mendocino is currently, I believe, 15% above us for deputies, 6% for corrections, and 16% for public safety dispatcher. As far as what's caused the situation, I know I've spoken before the board. I've spoken to most of you, if not all of you, individually. I don't see this as a Lake County problem. It's not a state problem. It's a nationwide problem. There simply aren't enough applicants, people who want to get into law enforcement, to fill vacancies. I don't think salary is the only issue, nor do I think it's going to magically fix everything. But I also think it can't be the final roadblock or can't be the final hurdle when we're trying to compete for the very few men and women who do want to work in a rural county like Lake County. Our current vacancy rate in the positions we're talking about is right about 30% for deputy sheriff, and just below 20% for deputy sheriff corrections, and that's a little bit deceiving just because we have hired some new people out there. We have 5 in training and numerous officers who are functioning but have not been completely trained on all aspects. We certainly hope to retain them long enough to get them off training to have a true benefit, but I know of at least 2 that are in background elsewhere. In fact, since writing these notes, we got a letter of resignation from one of them who will be leaving for another local department. For public safety dispatcher, the vacancy rate is 63.64% right now. Obviously, that's a huge problem in dispatch, but that also compounds the problem in patrol. We have to provide those services. We have 3 deputies currently working in dispatch. The vacancy rate tells part of the story, but there are just a few things I'd like to talk about that I think really put it in context. So patrol. The SO does a lot of things. We have the jail, dispatch, investigations, civil, boats, things like that, but most of our citizens see and identify with our patrol deputies. Those are the men and women in patrol cars that respond to calls for services, conduct proactive law enforcement in our community. And I can say by far, this area generates the most concern and the most complaints from our citizens. Long response times, lack of high visibility patrol, and the inability to respond to certain calls because we have to prioritize, and we simply don't have enough deputies on at any given time to respond to all calls for service. To give a little better idea where we are right now, we do patrol shift signups every 4 months. This time last year, we had 23 deputies signing up for patrol. That's our 24/7 operation. This year, at the same time, we have 13. And that 13 is after pulling deputies on a rotation basis from things like our roadmap task force and marijuana task force, and not having anybody in school resource. Again, this is not a Lake County problem exclusively. There are numerous, not numerous, but there are Northern California counties who've had to eliminate patrol altogether because of short staffing. So that's certainly something I don't plan to do here. Something else I'd like to point out about that situation is it has a tremendous effect on retention. If we're signing up somewhere close to half the number of deputies on patrol, but our calls for service have essentially stayed the same, that means you're doubling the workload of those individuals still working for us, and that is devastating on morale. Again, going back to being able to compete locally, you've probably seen, like LPD's local, or their social media, they've recently posted that they're fully staffed. And I think that's great. I support law enforcement in all of Lake County. I think they have 13 sworn positions, and 4 of those positions are filled with people who were one-time Lake County SO employees. That's 30%, by the way. And don't get me wrong, I've not talked to them individually. I'm not saying that any of them, did I get that wrong or something?
No, I'm just looking at Kevin back there.
By the way, I already talked to Brad. He knows it's coming too. And this is not a knock on LPD. Again, I'm very happy that every law enforcement entity should be fully staffed. And I was going to continue to say, I haven't spoken to them. I don't know individually if it's because of salary or workload. There was personal decisions made by each of those individuals, obviously. I just use them as an example of the importance and necessity of being able to compete, at least locally. Where that leaves me is, in closing, what I'm requesting of the board is to approve a request to move forward with the elimination of the aforementioned positions, allow the sheriff's office to use the savings gained to fund increases in 3 series of classifications mentioned: Deputy Sheriff Corrections, Public Safety Dispatcher, and to direct Human Resources to complete the necessary position allocation resolution and to complete the necessary meet and confer process with the affected bargaining units. And of course, that resolution would come back to the board in a future date once completed. And other than that, I don't think we have any significant changes in the Sheriff's Department budget. Like, that's not significant enough?
Thank you, Sheriff. I know that you didn't make this decision lightly, and I can only speak for myself, but this board has always been proactive with providing the positions needed moving forward. So if we really start to fill these positions, I think the rest of the board would agree to continue to provide them as needed.
I appreciate it, and the board's been very supportive, and this is something I think is necessary, but the recent improvements made over the past couple of years, I mean, if we didn't have those, we'd be looking at 30 to 40% below the median in some areas. So we've come a long way. I think it's a unique situation in law enforcement, and we just have to continue. But thank you.
So my next question then is, hopefully this we'll see some progress with this, but where are we with the signing bonuses, which we have also raised up significantly, but is that another area that we have to look at eventually too? Because I am hearing from you and other staff members that surrounding areas have greatly increased their signing bonuses. And so when do we need to look at that factor as well?
I feel like I was asking enough, but no, I'm just kidding. They help and they're beneficial. One of the problems we have is, of course, they help recruitment, but not as much as retention. We have had several employees resign knowing they're going to have to pay it back, because if they're leaving for a county like Napa or Sonoma, they're going to get not only a larger signing bonus, but the pay increase would pay that back no problem. So it's a good retention tool, I think, or excuse me, a good recruitment tool, but I think this is more for retention. And you're right, there are counties, $25,000, $50,000, $75,000 signing bonuses just between Napa, Sonoma, and the Bay Area. But there are plenty of Northern California counties who don't have them as well. I think we're okay there at the time. There may come a time when that has to increase to stay up with, to be competitive as well. But right now, my main focus is this.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Spatier, did you have your pen up?
Yeah, no, I was going to say I'm in full support of making those changes. One of my questions that I didn't ask you when you and I spoke earlier this week was how many vacancies does that still leave you after the changes that you're offering to make?
We'd be looking to hire a minimum of 5 deputies. We also have 3 in the academy right now and 3 in dispatch. So hopefully to improve those by 11. I brought about 5 for deputy corrections. Again, we have several in there, but they're awaiting training. So if we can get them off training and retain them, that will certainly benefit us. But a big deal is dispatch, obviously, with a 60+% vacancy rate, getting 3 deputies out of there and getting that fully staffed. We can hire, I think it's 6 dispatchers.
Okay. And to me, that part's important because that's kind of a foundation of ensuring that the communication from the public reaches the ears of law enforcement that are patrolling in the streets. Dispatch is really important, and also to keep our law enforcement out on the street rather than in the dispatch room.
Great.
I know that it's kind of contradictory to what I've been saying, which is why do we have unfunded positions? I just want to at least have the conversation. What's the difference? Some people get scared that if we get rid of positions, it's going to be that much more of an uphill battle to replace those. I haven't seen that here at this board level, but again, we don't know if any of us will be here 4 years down the road. just want to put the conversation out there, what would be the difference in unfunding those positions rather than getting rid of those positions, and your thoughts on that?
That's more of an issue, I think, with administration and what that means to overall budget. I do know that the thought of eliminating position has been a sticking point for a lot of people, me too in the past. For a couple reasons, I think this is a pretty unique situation we're in. And it's pretty simple math for me. I guess I'm a simple guy, but if I have 10 openings that I can't fill, and I have, by eliminating 5, it allows me to maybe fill the 5, that's 5 more than I had before. And that's really what we're looking at. And I have complete faith in the board that if we get to a position where we're fully staffed and our community needs more law enforcement officers, I'll be here again asking for that.
Okay.
Budgetarily, differences between unfunding and removal is just on your position allocation.
And the difficulty of placing it back on the position allocation if it's unfunded or removed?
Any time of the year.
Same basic steps?
It's a standard resolution or at budget time. The difference is if it's unfunded, if you, I'll say randomly, but not truly randomly have extra funding available, you can flip the switch and make it funded. But again, it would require coming back to the board. So either way, it'd be a quick board action to either add or fund the position depending on how it goes. So it's not a huge difference other than what you show on your FTE's position allocation chart.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sheriff. Just said, I know it's not an easy decision or discussion we're having, but obviously support this idea as we're moving forward. You know, the fundamental need of being able to pick up the phone and call for the Sheriff's Department and have a timely response in the most dangerous time of your lives. That's why you're doing this, or the need is really important. Since I've been on the board going on almost 7 years now, this has been a constant conversation in the community, public safety, and support this idea moving forward. So thank you for bringing it.
All right, thank you so much, Sheriff.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Try not to take your stuff with my stuff.
Does that change the previous slide for position allocation?
Yeah, I think it does.
So that concludes my presentation for the final recommended budget. So if you have questions.
Are we looking to make those changes today, just because we had a list of all the position allocation changes? Just, no, that'll be
The
coming back
sheriff
to
one?
us?
The sheriff one, it would come back.
Okay.
Once everything is set up, once meeting for and everything gets close, I don't.
Oh, that's right, it needs to go through that
It's
process.
such a long process that I don't feel right cutting positions or unfunding them now.
Okay.
Okay. I will open it up for the public. Do we have any comments in the board chambers or in the Zoom room? And I'm not on Zoom any longer. So Wendy, could you let me know if there's any hands up? Not seeing anyone in the chambers, and, oh, we do have someone, and I also
Great.
did not bring my clock in. So, thank you, Wendy.
You throw me on the clock, uh-oh.
He's got
Oh,
2 minutes.
oh. Thank you, Madam Chair and honorable members of the board. Kevin Ingram, City Manager with the City of Lakeport. Just speaking directly to the Parks Reserve, you know, I'm very happy with the commitment that all 3 entities, Clear Lake, Lakeport, and the county have made to the Lake County Risk Reduction Authority. I think we all know that the ask is really high. The feasibility studies that we did do for the 2 facilities. of
Recreation
concern-
Agency.
What did I say?
RRA.
Oh, gosh.
We didn't get that.
We talked
We didn't get that money. Kevin.
Okay, all right. Yeah, if you can throw $3 million to the RRA too, that'd be great too. The Rec Authority, thank you. That, you know, it's a heavy ask. The feasibility studies are extremely high. You know, I think in our meetings, we've noted that, you know, going to the voters and asking for $40 million would be crazy to fund this. You know, I think our goal of trying to get to where we're asking the voters instead for maybe operations seems a little bit more in the ballpark of realistic. So with that, it seems like the natural next step would be to try and get these projects to a spot where we can move forward with design. As you know, if we can get design in place, that certainly makes them much more competitive for other grant availability that's out there that I think could certainly, allow us to continue to chip away at that $40 million ask. Even that, using some very round numbers, $40 million, design usually ends up somewhere in the realm of 15% of total costs. You're looking at $6 million alone just in design for those. And one of the items that we've talked about is that there certainly is a need to probably look at including some greater amenities in some of the more unincorporated areas and serving those. So if we get to that level where we're asking to get those projects to design level 2, you're maybe looking somewhere in the $8 million position. So, I mean, I think the $3 million is a great there. I'll come with my hat and would encourage your board. I know you have many competing priorities, so I know this is not an easy one, but I think trying to lift that somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million. Certainly, other areas are going to have to pull their weight. That includes the city of Lakeport as well. But I think that would get us well in the area there. I think $3 million right now represents roughly about 37% of that total design. And the reality of the situation is you guys are certainly the heaviest hitter in the room, representing the greatest population base, and your budget is quite larger than mine. So there it is. There's my pitch. I certainly can answer any questions, but otherwise I will go return to my seat.
Great, thank you so much. Supervisor Sabatier?
As a question to you, sir, Mr. Ingram, it would be really nice if the committee can submit a letter of proposal to each jurisdiction showing what each share would be, so we know what we're looking at, we know what's being requested specifically, because right now we're seeing big numbers, but I also don't know what is the formula being used. Is it population-based? Is it geographic-based? Is it proximity-based to where those will be? And so having something more specific and a tailored plan ironed out than the proposal in front of us, then I think at that point, I think $3 million is a great place to start. And again, it may not be specifically just to that. It's a little bit nebulous for parks. But then at that point, I'd feel more comfortable saying, yes, this is what we can go ahead and commit to and things like that.
Yep, fair statement. I mean, yeah, I think, we're just getting up and going, and I think that is absolutely a place to be. And, and it is important to remember there are more partners than just the 3 entities. We certainly want to bring those, but at the same time, we are the 3 largest players in that discussion.
Stephen?
So I did have one question, Kevin. On the $5 million or $8 million for the project, is that all in 1 year, or is it over the course of time, or is that not known yet?
The short answer would be it's probably not known yet, but I think the quicker we can get them to design, because even though $40 million is an extremely large number, we know the longer we wait, it just gets larger and larger. So, I think it would be great, as this year's mission, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the full LCRA, just the city of Lakeport. It would be fantastic to get to a position this year where we were putting those projects out to design and then looking at, future grants and pitching them to other various entities as well to start chipping away at that larger cost.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Not seeing anyone in Zoom? No hands up in Zoom.
Yeah, there's one.
There's one? In your,
Well, it went off. Oh, now it's back up.
the participant list?
6205.
Okay, Wendy, can you get the timer ready? Okay, go ahead. I think it's Bart.
Thank you very much. This is Bart Levinson. In the past, these budget presentations have been excellent with visible slides. Not so today. We're seeing very little on the screen and nothing with the sheriff, nothing now. This is so complex and important information. We really need to see the slides and be able to request the images after the budget presentations. Thank you.
Do we have any other hands up? Is that it? Okay, then I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one thing regarding special districts. Just at least wanted to alert the board that I have spoken with Director Harder, and there is some work being done on the infrastructure of the southeast sewer, not southeast sewer treatment plant, but the infrastructure that brings the sewer to the treatment plant. And there will be things that there's been discussions to enhance the infrastructure within the city of Clear Lake. And those things I don't believe are on the capital asset list. I don't know if they have to be on that list, but it's things that will be coming in the near future.
Okay.
Not sure exactly what that timeline looks like.
Okay. So I know we had a couple adjustments that were made during the meeting here. Do we need to adjust anything in the recommended actions to incorporate them?
Yes.
Okay.
Casey, can you restate the AQMD account numbers and changes? And then I will explain the CDD ones.
Yes, to Budget Unit 8799, increase 1513 by $410, decrease 25 by $410, and decrease 38 by $2,364.
And then moving on to community development planning. In the revenue accounts, 2110, increase it by 83,000. Revenue account 2140, increase by 18,000. Revenue account 6612, increase by 18,000. And then moving down into the appropriations, account 0111, 72,238. 0221, 5,574. 0222, 16,978. Account 0330, $12,042. And then finally, account 0331 for $146. Sorry going into the weeds, but that will also be when you're going for the resolution that there's numbers that will have to be adjusted before signature, so.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if there's no further discussion, I offer the resolution adopting the final recommended budget for fiscal year 23-24 as detailed in the attachments with the included amendments as stated by both staff members in front of me.
Second.
Resolution's been offered.
Sorry.
All right, we're just,
Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Green? Yes. Supervisor Pyska?
yes. Michael.
Mine was on.
Now, you gave some numbers. Did we need to go through the specific numbers or just relate back to what was on the screen as far as the position allocation changes?
The one specific change would be adding the principal planner in budget unit 27.
In addition to what was listed on the matrix. So I offer the resolution establishing new classifications, the effective date thereof, and amending the position allocation chart for fiscal year 23-24 with what was proposed, including the amendment for CDD.
Resolution's been offered.
Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Green?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes. Okay. Thank you,
I know, but I was going to second the rest
finance
of it.
staff and Casey.
Thank you very much, board.
Congratulations on your first of many budget presentations to come.
Yes.
It's wonderful to work with both of you. Thank you for being so thorough and efficient, and for keeping us on track. Yes. Okay, well, I am delighted that we get to move into our non-timed items now that we've adopted the budget. 7.2, consideration of A, purchase of an animal control box in the amount of $30,776.15, and B, authorize the Animal Care and Control Director or his designee to issue a purchase order. Come on up.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. I'm Jonathan Armis, the Director of Animal Control. I believe this box was left off of, we purchased it last fiscal year. We had a really hard time getting a truck in a timely manner. We got a truck this year, so they are waiting for actual payment for that $30,775. So we're just looking today to get approval so that we can re-add it to our budget for missing it on this this fiscal year, last fiscal year to this one, so that we could actually send a payment out.
Okay, great. Any questions? Any questions from the public? Do we have any hands up in Zoom? Okay, then I will bring it back to the board for action.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the purchase of the animal control box from Diamond Truck Body in the amount of $38,184.85 and authorize the Animal Care and Control Director or his designee to issue a purchase order.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Good, good.
Go and conquer the box.
B, did you,
I did B, I did them both together.
oh, you did them both
Supposed
together.
to do them separate or together is good?
Together is good.
Okay,
We're done.
I knew it.
thank you. 7.3, consideration of proposed agreement between the County of Lake and PlaceWorks for planning services for general plan and local area plan updates. Community Development Director Turner? It's wonderful
Thank
to see
you.
again.
Mireya Turner, Community Development Director. We are so excited to bring this item to you today, and we will be brief because I know you have places to go. The general plan and local area plans are vital community visioning documents that must be updated on a regular basis. They guide land use planning decisions in our department. We are really excited to launch all of these updates. Many of them have been years in the coming, and so we're excited. Decades, yes. Our department sent out a request for proposals and received 3 proposals. There was unanimous decision to select PlaceWorks as our consultant. I want to add they were not the lowest bidder. However, their bid reflects what I was expecting to see. What I was really hoping to see is PlaceWorks is a planning firm that is renowned in the state. They communicate and help develop policy at the state level as well as local jurisdictional documents like ours. They also embraced my recommendation that we flip the normal order. Instead of doing the general plan first and then filling in with the area plans, in order to have the most robust reflection of the community vision, I wanted to do the area plans first and then the general plan. And PlaceWorks really picked up that ball and they just ran with it. And so we actually plan to have, instead of a robust general plan, we plan to really put the life, the strength into our local area plans. And then whatever is required by law to be in a general plan that may not have been covered yet is going to be in our general plan. And so it's going to be really cool because we're going to get this new synthesis of these community visioning documents that I think will really be very effective tools as we look to who are we now as a community and as a region, and where do we want to go. Skip. Oh, did have a PowerPoint, but let's just not worry about that. We have PlaceWorks staff in the Zoom room ready to speak, to tell you a little bit about their firm and talk about a timeline. I think Johanna was going to get that thing up, and so you can skip my 2 slides and get to their 3 slides.
Can you tell me who in Zoom I'm looking for?
It would be Tanya Sunderberg, I think, would be the one.
Okay, here we go.
Awesome.
Promoting to panelists, and then you want me to pull up the PowerPoint.
Yes, please.
Right?
So while she's doing all of that, let's just talk about the project that they're going to cover. Our general plan has a number of chapters or elements that are required by law. Jurisdictions can also have our own freestanding elements or general plans for areas that are of specific priority, and Lake County does have 4. So that would be a general plan, 4 extra elements, 8 local area plans, and an EIR. And I will hand it over to PlaceWorks.
Thank you, Maria. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. and thanks for bringing up this presentation. So good afternoon. My name is Tanya Sundberg, and I'm an associate principal at PlaceWorks. We're really excited about this opportunity to work with Lake County on this super important planning endeavor. Our team also includes Fair and Peers, who provide support on transportation planning and analysis, as well as eCorp Consulting, who provides biological and cultural resources and noise analysis support.
Johanna, would you please move to slide number 4? Next, there you go.
Thank you. So PlaceWorks has a staff of about 120 employees across 6 offices. We have a long history of working in California. It dates back over 45 years. And from the beginning, one of our foundational principles is about the integration, the importance of integrating all these different disciplines that relate to planning, and bring that all into a kind of greater whole. So our service areas include comprehensive planning, environmental review, urban design, landscape architecture, community outreach, and GIS. And then we have more specialized practice areas under each of those umbrellas. And so we have this multidisciplinary approach that emphasizes collaboration, both internally within our team and then externally with the clients and our clients' partners, also with community members and stakeholders. And so meaningful outreach, engagement, and communication are really all core to our work. And we're constantly learning. We're responding to new and complex regulations, adapting to economic and environmental changes. And so we're embracing those as new opportunities and challenges to learn, and we adapt and grow. So next slide, please. So we are a leader in California for general plan preparation. We've worked on over 100 general plans across the state. I wanted to highlight a little of our recent county general plan experience, starting with the Butte County General Plan. That was we prepared a comprehensive update for the Butte County General Plan in 2010. And then more recently, we updated that to help the county rebuild and recover from some local disasters, including the 2018 Camp Fire and the 2020 North Complex Fire. So we're really working through that plan to help create a more resilient future for the county. We also recently worked with Placer County to update their health and safety element, also to build resilience and respond to state requirements. And we're also scheduled to go before their Board of Supervisors at the end of this month to consider awarding a contract to PlaceWorks for a full general plan update as well. So we're continuing to work in that county on the full update. We're all underway right now with a general plan update for Contra Costa County. That's a comprehensive update to their general plan. And one thing that's really interesting about Contra Costa County is how diverse all of the county is and the unincorporated communities throughout the county. So we are working at a real community scale within this large county. So we have community scale policy guidance for communities ranging from North Richmond at the very western edge of the county, very urban, lots of transit and high density development, all the way out to Byron, which is in the east part of the county, a very rural agriculture community. So that's a really exciting project. And then as a last highlight, we prepared a countywide plan for San Bernardino County. That's an online web-based plan, establishes a countywide vision, and it's considered as complete county plan that covers all county government services for San Bernardino. So next slide, please. Just last here in the presentation, I wanted to give an overview of what we anticipate for the Lake County General Plan update and local area plans update. It is a 3-year schedule. So the first year will be focused on project initiation, preparing and getting ready for all of the engagement over the course of the project. We'd be holding initial meetings with the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. And then we'd be also initiating coordination with other government agencies while doing some background research and review. Also in that first year, we'd get through the preparation of the draft countywide elements, including health and safety, noise, geothermal, agricultural resources, and water resources. And then in that first year, we'd also be, we will have initiated the local area plans update. We're holding a round of in-person community meetings in each of the 8 area plans. We'd be talking to community members to learn about the issues that are important in their community, and then considering alternative approaches to addressing those issues for the local area plans to address. And so then in the second year, we'd be completing the work to prepare the local area plans and starting the environmental impact report analysis. And then finally in year 3, we'll be completing the draft environmental impact report, receiving comments, and then preparing the final EIR, concluding with adoption hearings and preparation of the final plans. So that's a summary of our overall process, and I'll turn it back to Maria.
Thank you very much. One last thing. The funding for this project is based largely due to the support of the supervisors in approving the increase in the ARPA funds. 1.6 comes from that. The remaining funds come from the LEAP and REAP grants, which are local and regional early action planning grants. We have arranged some of our timeline to meet different grant deadlines, but it's super exciting to have full funding for this project. So thank you very much. We're ready to take any questions.
We are just so excited to be kicking off on this priority that's been at the top of our list for a long, long time. So thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Supervisor Green?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the contract. I'm seeing some mismatch on the exhibits referenced on the first page of that. Exhibit A, definitions, so I don't see a definitions, so all the others appear to be misnumbered. So scope of services looks to be Exhibit A and stuff like that. So it looks like just some housekeeping needs to be done in the contract itself. And one reason I was looking for the scope of services was I like seeing excited planners, but I thought we were doing an update to 2 elements of the general plan. Safety and housing, I think, were the ones on our to-do list that the state is most upset with us. Have we gone bigger and bolder than that?
Thank you. That's a great question, because when I first came back, when I first started, safety and housing were at the top of our list. There was legislation passed recently that when we went to HCD to ask about the deadline for the housing element, they said, you're fine. You don't have to turn in an updated 6th cycle by September of this year, which we thought. So we're now on the normal schedule for the 7th cycle of housing element. So that is later. We are looking for, it's due to the state by 2027, I think. So we are looking for funding for that.
So then coach me a little bit about this contract for the umbrella general plan, but then if element updates come later. For example, I heard the word agriculture. I was excited about that. I want the agriculture element to be updated, if only so we can look at cumulative impacts, combined cannabis, stuff like that. So help educate me then. This is the umbrella master plan, not drilling down into the elements necessarily.
So far, this is everything with the exclusion of the housing element. And as soon as we secure grant funding for that housing element, we'll probably bring back a request for an amendment of the agreement to add that back in. But it would include safety element. That's one of our top priorities. And inside that safety element is the climate vulnerability analysis and the county-wide evacuation plan. And so that is included in this. The other, as well as the 4 specific ones that are Lake County priorities. The agriculture one, geothermal resources, our water resources that covers our lake. I can never remember all 4. And then that other one, aggregate resource management plan that regulates the removal of resources from our quarries and our streams.
Was it cultural resources too?
Cultural resources goes throughout that game. Yeah, we don't have a specific one for that.
Okay. All right.
And I'm happy to talk to you.
So again, we're missing, other than the lettering changes on the exhibits, you're confident the scope of work adequately describes what we're doing here?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Sabatier.
Yeah, and reading the proposals from PlaceWorks, that covers everything that we've been discussing and looking at the timeline. I just wanted to mention something since you brought it up, wanted to make sure that there was at least one comment made about it. Through specific RFP process, we're definitely supposed to go with the lowest cost that comes through us For this, that is not the case. We are looking for quality. We want this to be for the lack of a better term, the constitution of how we move forward over the course of the next 20 years. And so we want to make sure we do this right, that we do this with not just brevity and efficiency, but with the quality work we need to ensure the further development of this county in the future. So while it may not be the lowest that you received in your proposals, I am in absolute approval that we need to make sure that we hire the best of what was proposed to us so that we can move forward knowing that those documents are really going to be able to support us as we move forward in the future. So I just wanted to make a comment on that.
Thank you. All right, public comment? Anyone in the Zoom room? Do we have any hands up? Okay, then we'll bring it back to the board for action.
I just want to go back.
There's a hand up in the Zoom room, sorry. It's Betsy, one moment.
Okay. And do you have your timer?
I just got to go back. I don't see Exhibit D.
Okay, just a moment. Go ahead, Betsy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I just have one question, which is when CDD Director Turner started this presentation, she described the changes to the process where the area plans would be first. I want to know if the slide presented by the consultant reflects that in the terms of the 3-year steps. I just want to be sure that's integrated.
Yeah, and yeah, go ahead and answer.
If I heard correctly, that was the local area plans coming first?
Right, and she wanted to make sure that the slide that was presented correlated, and if you look at the timeline in the proposal, it also shows.
Yes, year 1 would be working on the drafts, reaching out to the local area plans. Year 2 is preparing those drafts and getting those approved. Yes.
And there's much more detailed timelines in the lengthy proposal.
Yes.
That is attached to the agenda. Okay. All right, Supervisor Green.
Actually, I'm missing 2 exhibits, D and E.
Did I only upload one attachment? Because
Lloyd?
Yes, if I may. I believe Exhibit D would be the proposal for services, which is attached in the agenda item packet.
Except it's just identified as attachment 1, but it's attachment D.
Right. And Exhibit E would be the cost proposal, also attached in the agenda item packet. If your board wishes to do so, it could make the corrections or amendments reflected on just Section 1 to make it consistent with the other pages in the document. Section 1 of the agreement, wherein the last sentence of that Section 1 would state that in the event of a conflict in or inconsistency between the terms of this agreement and Exhibit A, scope of services, Exhibit B, fiscal provisions, Exhibit C, compliance provisions, and Exhibit D, proposal for services, and Exhibit E, cost proposal, the agreement shall prevail. With that amendment, that should make it consistent with the other sections of the agreement and its exhibits.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Simon? You had your... Okay.
Can you, I'm sorry, can you point out what the scope of services is called out in the RFP?
Could you reword that question? I'm not sure I understood what you were asking.
Well, he's citing to a cost breakdown apparently within this 92-page RFP document. And if we're relying on that, I guess I'd like to take a look at it real quick. What?
I have it. I would be happy to hand it to you. Or I would be happy to give it to Wendy.
And that's on the cost proposal?
Well, that would be Exhibit E, the cost proposal, but the scope of services appears to be many, many pages within the RFP document.
Right.
Well, it's a big project.
Yeah.
And it is, it starts on page 27.
Indeed.
All right, so if I can just suggest amending the contract.
Did you have a chance to review it? It's been on the agenda last 2 weeks.
There is a summary also just on page 28 that does describe it in a neat, tidy table.
Just want clarity that everyone's happy with the form of the contract and all the exhibits are solid.
Indeed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for action. Mr. Simon?
Yeah, now they made amendments and I don't remember all of them, so I'm going to go to, so I move to approve the agreement between the County of Lake and PlaceWorks for planning service and general plan and local area plans updates with the amendments that were suggested today in an amount not to exceed 1.888.94, $1,888,954, and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Yay!
Yes.
Can't wait.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. Okay, 7.4, consideration of Amendment 1 to the agreement with Core Design Group for facility design services for the Behavioral Health Clear Lake Facility Expansion Project. Behavioral Health. I'm sorry, Public Services. Behavioral Health is here. Thank you, Lars.
Of course. All right, Lars Ewing, Public Services Director. I guess that's on. There we go. So this is a carryover from last week. It was contingent upon the approval of the budget. Currently, the Behavioral Health Department has, the Public Services is managing this project on behalf of Behavioral Health. So any questions that are budget related or operation related, I'll defer to Behavioral Health. But in summary, this project has been underway, under design for a little less than a year. They've completed what's commonly called the schematic design phase. During that design phase, they come up with the program for the project, and that program has identified the need for additional modifications to the existing building above and beyond what was originally scoped out, along with a larger expansion area. So the proposal that we requested of the design firm is to complete that work. The memo summarizes some of it, but in short, it's additional work to the existing facility, improvements, and then a larger expansion area. So happy to answer any other questions. And if Elise is here, I believe she is, then she can hopefully help me out with some of the more need-based questions.
Supervisor Sabatier.
So originally, when this came to us, I had some issues with it. This is the amendment to that original one, so I'm going to move forward with it. Just to have a couple of questions. I know that there's the expansion. Is there a plan to maybe repaint the whole building, or just kind of make sure everything matches? It's not just an expansion, it's also kind of doing maintenance on the original part of the building as well?
Yes, there's a lot. The existing building is in need of some TLC. So that's the broad sum of it. Whether painting is specifically included in there, I don't know. That would be a relatively minor cost in the overall project. But it's the majority of the improvements for the existing building are electrical, mechanical. That's really the driver for the additional cost, along with some site access needs. There was no topography survey that was envisioned, so that needs to be done to get access. But if you're specifically asking about painting, which I think that was more of an example, but yes, that sort of stuff would need to be done.
I just know that with the infrastructure upgrades that just occurred in that area, it kind of stands out a little bit, so it would be nice if we can make sure to finish the whole thing when we finish this. Part of my issue that I had originally was the use of our opioid settlements for the actual construction of it. I know that we are using that as a leverage to use it as 10% matching and getting 90% paid for through the state. So I'm going to move forward with that in favor, but really hope that we can have a large total accumulation of what our opioid settlement looks like prior to spending more money, just so that we have a master plan of what we're doing with that. I'm not going to call this a piecemeal, I think this is still a good thing, and we're using the money to leverage more, so it's not like we're just spending money. But I just wanted to put that out there because I think it's important for us to look at the big picture of this settlement and make sure that we utilize it for the best of our needs. And I am speaking to behavioral health and the board, not to you as public services.
I felt like a window there, so I'm happy to have that go behind me, yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Any comments from the public? Anybody in the Zoom room? Okay, bring it back to the board for action.
Madam Chair, I move to approve Amendment 1 to the agreement with COAR Design Group for facility design services for the Behavioral Health Clear Lake Facility Expansion Project.
And authorize the chair to sign.
And authorize the chair to sign.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lars. 7.5, sitting as Kelseyville County Waterworks District Number 3 Board of Directors, consideration of A, waiving the competitive bid process per Section 238-4, cooperative purchases of the county code, and B, approving the purchase of a Ford F-550 service truck for KCWWD number 3, and authorize special districts administrator, assistant, purchasing agent to sign the purchase request. Director
Thank
Harder.
you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The next three items that are before you from my department for your attention are items that were in process prior to preliminary budget, and so they didn't make it into that. So we had to wait till final budget approval to bring these capital items to you. As you summarized, this is for a replacement service truck for our Kelseyville area. It's a cooperative purchase. It's purchased off the state contract, and we would ask that the board would consider waiving the competitive bid process and approving the purchase order and authorize me to sign it.
Okay. Comments from the board?
So moved.
Comments from the public? Anyone in Zoom? Back to the board for action.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, since it's in your district area, I move to approve the waiving of the competitive bidding process per Section 2-38.4, cooperative purchases of the county code, and B, approve the purchase of a Ford F-550 service truck for KCWWD number 3, and authorize the special district's administrator / assistant purchasing agent to sign the purchase request.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 7.6, sitting as the Lake County Sanitation District Board of Directors, consideration of A, waiving the competitive bidding process pursuant to Lake County Code Section 2-38-4, cooperative processes, B, authorizing special districts administrator / assistant purchasing agent to issue a purchase order not to exceed $79,000 to Garton Tractors for the purchase of a four-wheel drive ROPS tractor. Director Harder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, this item is before you for your consideration. This is a capital budget purchase for a tractor to help with maintenance around our southeast treatment plan, ditch maintenance, mowing, et cetera. Cooperative purchase through Sourcewell, here for your consideration.
Questions or comments? Any public input? Anyone in Zoom? Bring it back to the board for action.
This one? All right. So I'll go ahead and motion to, let's see, waive. Yeah, sorry, I have it right here. All right. Motion to waive the competitive bidding process pursuant to Lake County Code Section 2-38.4, cooperative purchases, and authorize special districts administrator assistant purchasing agent to issue a purchase order not to exceed $79,000 to Garton Tractors for the purchase of a four-wheel drive ROPS tractor.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 7.7, sitting as the Lake County Sanitation District Board of Directors, consideration of A, waiving the competitive bidding process pursuant to Lake County Code Section 238.4, cooperative purchases, and B, authorizing special districts administrator assistant purchasing agent to issue a purchase order not to exceed $550,000 to Owen Equipment for the purchase of a Vector 2100i truck. Director Harder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for an additional Vector for our fleet. This is some larger equipment. This is a smaller version of something we've already got, which will allow it to be more maneuverable. But we use it for sewer line cleaning. We use it for vacuum excavation, so we can dig down without having to worry about hitting buried power lines, cables, et cetera. It's a safe way for our staff to get out there and address sewer spills, water leaks in the middle of the night in emergency situations. This, again, is a cooperative purchase through Sourcewell and through Own Equipment and the local dealer here in California.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Public input? Zoom room? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for action.
Madam Chair, I motion to waive the competitive bidding process pursuant to Lake County Code Section 2-38.4, cooperative purchases, and authorize Special Districts Administrator Assistant Purchasing Agent to issue a purchase order not to exceed $550,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you,
Thank you very
Director
much.
Harder. Okay. We'll go to our consent items. 5.4 was pulled for a future date. 5.8, Supervisor Sabatier.
So, do you want to read it?
Yeah, I gotta get
All
there.
right.
Approve agreement between the County of Lake and Resource Development Associates for consultation and support in community program planning, CPP, process for fiscal years 2023 to 2024, 2024 to 2025, 2025 to 2026 in the amount of $310,920 and authorize the board chair to sign.
So it is my opinion, in speaking with admin as well, that this requires either a waiving of the bidding or to go through the bidding process. And since there is no Part A of waiving the bidding, that this might need to come back with that written into the headline of the item.
Okay, so continue this. Bring it back.
Yes, we can bring it back with a revised title and request.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 510 was pulled by community members who are no longer here, so I will just read it. Approve the continuation of the proclamation declaring a shelter crisis urgency due to the current need for sheltering for those experiencing homelessness during the weather and temperature patterns that the County of Lake has been experiencing. Yes. Sure.
And while she's walking up, Supervisor Green and myself do plan to review this to make sure it's updated for the right reasons for continuing the crisis, the shelter crisis. It was originally intended because of the need of a warming shelter. We kind of went through the summer without updating it or anything like that, and so want to make sure that it's relevant to the needs of today. And so please do expect a revision of this for the next time when the 30 days are up.
Director Jones?
Thank you so much, Director Elise Jones of Behavioral Health. This isn't specific to the continuation of the emergency proclamation. However, I just want to note on record publicly for everybody that the emergency shelter is not scheduled to close. While we are looking at, and we went out to request for proposals for a new provider of those services. We're currently in negotiations. We anticipate no break in services. We at no time expect the doors to close. There is no funding issue. There is no issue, in my professional opinion, that would prevent the warming shelter from continuing to operate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public input?
Thank you for those statements.
Anyone in the Zoom room? Bring it back to the board for action.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the continuation of the proclamation declaring a shelter crisis urgency due to the current need of sheltering for those experiencing homelessness during the weather and temperature patterns that the County of Lake has been experiencing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, and clearly Lars left for that. They did after he left. 5.2 was pulled by a community member who is no longer here. Approve continuation of proclamation of the existence of a local emergency due to pervasive tree mortality. If there's no comments from the board and no comments from there's no one in the chambers, anyone in Zoom? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for action.
Madam Chair, I will move to approve continuation of proclamation of the existence of a local emergency due to pervasive tree mortality.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 519, adopt resolution authorizing the applications for grant funds through the FAA Airport Improvement Program and designating the Public Works Director as the county's authorized representative. And we've got Director De Leon.
Yes, good afternoon, Board. Thank you very much. We had to pull this item to add a third resolution to the resolution. There will be, it's basically the same with the addition of number 3, which reads, ratifies the September 15th, 2023 signed acceptance by the sponsor's official representative of the Federal Aviation Administration Airport Improvement Program fiscal year 2023 Airport Improvement Program AIP grant agreement. I see it there on the screen. So the modified resolution has point number 3, and your recommended action is basically the same with the words as modified added to the end. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
We have any questions?
Nope.
Anyone in the Zoom room? No? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for action.
Move the Board of Supervisors adopt, offer the resolution as amended.
The resolution's been offered.
Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Green?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes. Okay, 5.20, approve the purchase order for the purchase of 1 vehicle for the central garage fleet and 3 capital assets for the road department, and authorize the Public Works Director / Assistant Purchasing Agent to sign the purchase orders. Was this pulled by you?
Yes, I had pulled it because I wasn't exactly sure on what the total amount was and the number of items, and I believe that Director De Leon has that broken down for us, so we can go ahead and move forward with the motion.
You bet. And let me provide you with your recommended action. Staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve purchase orders for the following items. 1 2023 Ford F-150 4x4 pickup for the central garage fleet to Downtown Ford, utilizing the state of California contract in the amount of $36,798.63. 2 Fecon masticator heads for the road division of Public Works to Pape Machinery in the amount of $59,416.50, and 1 Boss VTX snowplow for the road division of Public Works to D&D Equipment Sales in the amount of $12,694.06. And authorize the Public Works Director / Assistant Purchasing Agent to sign the purchase orders.
Thank you.
Do we have any comments? Anybody in the Zoom room? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for action.
I make a motion matching the exact statement provided by Director De Leon.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And we have our calendars, but I will just ask if we can continue that for this week because we have to get on the road, if that's okay with everybody. For disclosure, myself and Supervisor Crandall and staff members have to drive to Monterey, and we have to get going. So we can do calendars tomorrow or next week and get all caught up. Not tomorrow, next week.
For the annual RCRC.
The annual RCRC meeting. Thank you so much. Okay, so we will now move into closed session. We have 3 items. 8.1, public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, interviews for Chief Public Defender and appoint Chief Public Defender. 8.2, public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, interviews for Interim Health Services Director, appointment of Interim Health Services Director. And 8.3, conference with legal counsel, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2E1, one potential case. So thank you for joining us today, and we will go into closed session.